We're looking at everything between total world collapse, finance chaos, and $1 million Bitcoin in the next 90 days. Something between 2 more weeks to get done, between actually having V3 and starting that countdown toward mainnet. We've got more exchanges, we've got more liquidity coming in, we've got more influencer eyes, we've got a bigger audience. There is a lot going on, and in times like this, the more tumultuous it gets, the more I like to recommend just do less. So everybody, take a walk, get some nature, talk to a tree, look around at some squirrels, birds, whatever it is that helps keep you calm and relaxed when there's this much going on in the markets. Be safe. What's going on, community? Wallrus here. Want to give you a little update on PulseChain and the market. Whew, I thought I'd come somewhere nice and zenful since we got all these bears and bulls fighting as hard as they can. It just depends on what news cycle you're reading. You either think the world's about to fall apart or you think we're about to pump to $1 million. There is no in between. We have the update from RH, the last tweet here, showing that we are roughly 95% through with all the sync, that things are progressing well, that PulseX and all these things are wrapped up. So those boys probably are running everything through multiple different environments. So they probably have 4 or 5 renditions up of the testnet itself. So they'll be going through and doing different modeling, lining these things out in a variety of ways, testing different mechanics. So those guys should be, they got to be right there toward putting a ribbon on these things. There shouldn't be too much more for them to wrap up. We're just all getting excited. You could see the absolute just virality in the community. We also got our listing on MexC. Very, very cool. I know that this has caused a little bit of commotion there with some of the Hexicans and people upset about what has been our tenor and tone towards centralized exchanges. I think we got to understand is this isn't meant to push anyone away from Uniswap or custodianship or any of the things that we preach. This is another option, right? We want to have more people who have a way to interact with the community, to interact with the HEX code. That's what this is. If they come on MexC and they see HEX, fantastic. Gives them a chance to come listen to us, the community, get a chance to get our worldview out there. So this isn't about moving away from our value set, our worldview. It's about trying to bring more people in. It's the same thing with outrage marketing or any of the other things we do, NASCAR racing. When we sponsored the HEX car, the HEX car we had for the NASCAR race, we weren't trying to get more people into doing circle track racing. We're trying to get people to see HEX, trying to get them to come listen to the rest of the community. And that's what this is about. It's just going to be moving people into more valuable things, to giving them a chance to hear what Hexicans are building and putting forth in the world. And that's just positive. So the fact that we have another large player, another centralized institution making waves and actually bringing us on board, we should be happy about that. Another aspect on all this banking regulation and closing and liquidity crunches and issues that we've seen, I think is really interesting. We see that there's a huge push for some of these banking partners on some sides that's not quite what we would have really expected in a lot of ways. So Justin Sun, one of the founders over at Tron, he actually put in a bid for Credit Suisse in Switzerland. Now UBS ended up actually picking them up for $2 billion. That company was valued at like $7 billion, their market valuation, I think a week ago. So that's a pretty huge L. But still, to see Justin Sun put in a bid there, I think was interesting. We've seen Jesse Powell comment on Kraken, looking at opening up a bank. We see Caitlin Long from Custodia. They've been pushing a lot of more positive regulation and moving into the space, trying to accept more crypto clients, be fully backed by cash. A lot of things that we find to be very, very positive narratives. So there is a lot of turmoil in the banking system. And I think that what we've seen here that I think is actually a really, really big positive and something interesting is typically whatever's bad for the market is still net bad for crypto eventually, right? Like RH, a lot of people have commented on how, essentially some of these plays in crypto are just a leverage play on the S&P 500, that there's not going to be a decoupling, a lot of these kind of messaging like that. What I think is interesting, we've seen this in some smaller environments with smaller plays, that when people get pushed away from legacy, when they get added sanctions, they tend to move toward things that are harder to censor, harder to sanction. So we've seen this with Iran. We've seen this with some of the countries. Again, it's not that we agree with their worldview, but this is the reaction to the action of extra legislation or friction being added. So we see, again, Russia, Iran, we've seen a lot of these places start to pick up and change their adoption and their regulations on crypto as we see more rules come in that affect them. What I think is really powerful, what we've seen here recently is there was a positive sentiment in the markets from a lot of these things. We see crypto responding positively towards some of these banking failures rather than there just being this whole fear narrative that pushes through and ends up pulling the markets down. So I don't know that we can extrapolate this yet, but I think there's an interesting inflection point to where the technology, the tech, the community, the industry as a whole is mature and sound enough. It can be seen as a bit of a safe haven for some of the issues that we see in traditional markets rather than being a leverage play on them where you want to be in Bitcoin on the way up and you want to be in everything else on the way down because of how volatile these things are. We're seeing some different things play out. This isn't me saying that these things are decoupled, that the world's going in an entirely different direction, just that we're seeing some historically inaccurate movements between the way these things are playing out. I think that stuff's really interesting to pay attention to. And we're seeing radically different ends on how people's view of the market. On one side, we're seeing this huge liquidity crunch, banks having more stresses, more issues. And on the other, we have people talking about hyper bullishness, that they're going to see unprecedented movements in Bitcoin. And I think that stuff is interesting. So typically, whenever we have this kind of chaos, I always recommend do less, be safe, protect your principal, try to earn more cash, more funds, more capital in the beginning. It's easier than trying to capture all this yield and being rushed in a market at a later point. So I think that we have a lot of great things to look forward to, but it's a time to be careful seeing all this chaos. We have a lot of coins coming on market. We have a lot more regulation, a lot of uncertainty, but we're moving forward and we're seeing a lot of price positive, especially in our little ecosystem. And I'm very, very excited to see the resilience of what we're building and what the community is learning and teaching and putting out there. And I think that message is needed now more than it has been in a long time when it comes to the industry. We're building cool stuff, and cool stuff matters. So it'll be really exciting to see how this development continues, how much more we can add on and build. We're looking at everything between total world collapse, finance chaos, and $1 million Bitcoin in the next 90 days. Something between 2 more weeks to get done, between actually having V3 and starting that countdown toward mainnet. We've got more exchanges, we've got more liquidity coming in, we've got more influencer eyes, we've got a bigger audience. There is a lot going on, and in times like this, the more tumultuous it gets, the more I like to recommend just do less. So everybody, take a walk, get some nature, talk to a tree, look around at some squirrels, birds, whatever it is that helps keep you calm and relaxed when there's this much going on in the markets. Be safe, protect principal, stay relaxed. We'll catch you next week. We'll have another update, maybe even a live testnet. We'll see how everything goes. Community, Walrus, give y'all a shout later.